All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's the first gathering of the EEAC for the 2024-25 school year. We got some new faces in here and some returning members as well. Zinnia will be here in a little while, but we can move on, and when she gets here, we can have her introduce herself to people as well. So as far as the agenda for tonight, we'll go ahead and do a round of introductions since we do have some new faces here, and just to level, just ground ourselves. Also to help ground ourselves after we do introductions, we'll practice the art of community. That's not something that we've typically done at the beginning of every EEAC meeting, but I think we'd like to do it to kick off the meetings for this year. After that, I will get into providing a background and history of the EEAC. So this will be a refresher for returning members, and it'll be like a training for the new members. And then we'll get into reviewing some of the work from prior year. And same thing, a refresher for people that were on the committee last year and training for the new members. And then after that, we will get into an ABC and 4Cs protocol training, hopefully once Zinnia gets here. So we will do essentially a live training. We'll try to look at a document that's useful and purposeful, and to get everybody up to speed on some of the protocols that we will use to review some data this year. So with that being said, we'll start off with introductions, and then I'll introduce myself first, and as usual, I like to go to the left, so then we'll go to Brad after myself. So when you introduce yourself, please share your name, your role within the school district, such as like parent, caregiver, or staff, or student. Some of us are both, so feel free to say both. And then also, if you're comfortable, the lens that you bring to this work, the equity lens that you bring. So for me, my name is Jacob DeGraw. I am the chair of the Educational Equity Advisory Committee. I have a son who is a sophomore at Tualatin High School, and he is Black. My wife and I adopted him from Ethiopia, so we are an interracial family, and that's the lens that I bring to this work.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Dorsey, and I'm a parent of a 9-year-old who I love, who attends Durham Elementary. And the lens I bring is a diverse lens. My son, too, is biracial, and I love the focus on equity in this committee. And so I'm very, very, very glad to be here once again.
Hi, I'm Marisa Salinas. I am a parent with a kiddo at CFT and Fowler. We are a multiracial, multicultural household as well, Japanese, Mexican, and indigenous, as well as other backgrounds. So I bring that perspective, as well as having a child at some point that identified as part of the LGBTQIA community. And I have a pretty strong background in civil rights and equity and diversity.
Hello, everyone. My name is Henry, and I am an alumni from the TTSD. I'm also part of the TTSD budget committee as well, and I have a younger sister who is a freshman right now, and so that's the lens I do my work. And I'm also Hispanic as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nina Lee, and I teach at Bridgeport Elementary. I am also one of the building equity coordinators, and the lens I bring is being a BIPOC woman, and also my passion in this work, just looking at systemic barriers for students, whether it's race, socioeconomic status, and all the other various factors that create barriers. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Lisa McCall. I am the Assistant Superintendent for TTSD. This is the beginning of my 6th year in this role, and the lens that I bring is support for this committee, and also the experience of being on a previous committee, which was our East Committee. I also have a multiracial family, but I've been in education for almost 30 years. And the other lens that I bring is that I have had various roles throughout education, from classified, from being an IA to a kindergarten home visitor, as well as being a teacher, paraeducator, uh, administrator in a district role as well. I'm so happy to be here and support this great work.
Hi, I'm Barb Doyle. I am the ELD teacher at Deer Creek Elementary. And the lens I bring is that my students, we have over 100 at our school, they come from every socioeconomic background, they come from every racial background, they come from every linguist background. So I have a pretty broad idea of what their role is in the school and how things work for them in the elementary schools. I've been doing it for 10 years. This is my 10th year in the district and my 10th year at Deer Creek.
Hello, everyone. My name is Octavia Horn, and I am the Culture Responsive Coordinator for the district. I support middle schools, TTVA, and LifeWorks. This is my 10th year at TTSD, and I started out as a student of TTSD, then a parent, and now I work for the district. So those are all the lenses that I bring to help support this.
Good evening, I'm Diane Watson, and I have 2 children in TTSD. My racial background is Black, and my doctorate is in teaching and learning, so I have those lenses as well.
Hi, I'm Lisa Jones. I have a trans student at Fowler. So I bring that lens, a parent of a transgender child. I also have a 3rd grader at CF Tigard, and I have a pre-K at Head Start, which is at CF Tigard. What else? I'm a domestic violence survivor, so I bring that lens as well. And yeah, that's it. I'm passionate about policy work.
Hi, I'm Lauren Riddle. I use they, them pronouns. The lens that I bring is I'm a queer neurodivergent parent of a neurodivergent trans child at Fowler. And I work as a traditional health worker in the peer support world. So I work in behavioral and mental health. And so that's how I'm here showing up.
Hi, good evening. My name's Anna Miranda. I'm a parent. I have a child that goes to Fowler, and I have a kindergarten that goes to Metzger, and I also have a student that goes to Head Start for pre-K. My lens is that I have 2 special education students in the school district. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Danielle Byer, and I have a 6th grader at Fowler, recently out of CF Tigard, and we have experienced the special education program as well as 504s. We lost our IEP because we were doing so great. So, and I guess the transition into 6th grade has been a little rough. Yeah. For parents as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Zinnia Un. I'm the Director of Equity and Inclusion and Multilingual Services, and I'm here as our district liaison with the EEAC and our board and their cabinet.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, for introducing yourselves. And yeah, that we have a few more members who weren't able to be here tonight. So I anticipate that, at next meeting, we would probably still do another round of introductions because, again, we just want to make sure that everybody gets to introduce themselves to each other. But thank you. All right, now we will practice the art of community. So like I said, this isn't something that we typically do at the beginning of every one of our meetings, but we want to start off this year by practicing this. So those that have been at events that TTSD puts on might be familiar with this already, but for those that aren't, these are a series of phrases that help ground us in the work that we do. And I guess what we can do this time around, and it's often what we do, is have people volunteer to read out one of these, like go in order and read out each of the bullets. So rather than going around the table, whoever feels comfortable to speak out, one of the phrases, and then move on to the next one. And then after we do that, we'll do another round where people have the opportunity to talk about which one of these is resonating with them right now, as well as just anything else. If is there anything else going on in your life or something that you want to share, in this space. So who wants to start?
We acknowledge that we bring our lived experiences into our conversations.
We strive to be in community with one another with care.
We try to stay curious about each other.
We recognize that we need each other's help to become better listeners.
We slow down so we have time to think and reflect.
We remember that conversation is a natural way we think together.
We expect it to get messy at times.
We will listen with intention to learn something new.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So again, we'll go around the table and then people can feel free to say which one of these is resonating with them, with yourself, or again, if there's something else that you want to share before we get into our work tonight. I guess I can go ahead and start. And that I always like to listen with the intent to learn something new, whether it's getting to know new people or learn new information. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always looking to learn something.
What's really resonating with me is we try to stay curious about each other. We have multiple new members this year, so it's going to be interesting to get to know not just more about the lens from which you're coming to the community, the committee, but also getting to know you all as individuals.
I think for me, it just resonates to slow down and have time to think and reflect because I'm always constantly going. So I have to remind myself to slow down and listen.
And I'll piggyback off of that. We slow down so we have time to think and reflect. And I think this committee kind of does that for our district in a whole. So I think that's the one that is resonating with me.
The one that resonates with me is where we expect it to get messy at times. Not everything's always going to go smooth. There's always going to be some bumps in the road. You just have to overcome the obstacle.
I agree. That was mine as well.
What resonates with me is we will listen with the intention to learn something new, both because I am new to this committee, but also because of my background is a white woman who has been well educated, and so I have a lot to learn from other people, and my role here really is to listen.
The one that resonates for me the most is we acknowledge that we bring our lived experiences into our conversations. We all have different backgrounds, and we all bring our own lenses to the conversation. And I think it's really important that we all listen to all those lenses.
I resonate with we will listen with intention to learn something new as well. Even though this is my second year, I still feel like a newbie and that I'm learning a new language. So I'm really excited to be here this year and just build upon what I learned last year.
I think what resonates with me similar to Henry, I think are the two. We acknowledge that we bring our lived experiences into our conversations and we strive to be in community with one another with care. I think one of the things that I am just aware of is, our students and our families have their own stories outside of TTSD and like what is happening with them and what's happening in the world, what's happening in their community and their family is something that they bring with them to our school, to our community. And so ensuring that we acknowledge that and also care for them is really critical.
For me, we try to stay curious about each other, and that's really important to me because what it does allows me not to be curious just for curious sake, but really it does allow me to listen and really try to understand another person's lived experience or perspective, and that way it keeps the conversation going.
For me, the first one, we acknowledge that we bring our lived experiences into our conversations. That's kind of the work that I do as a peer support specialist. And so I think I live that regularly, and I really like that that was called out here. And I think that's how we're all kind of showing up. And so that really is profound to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And again, even though that's not something that we necessarily practice at the beginning of every meeting, it's just something that we want to be mindful of and think about that, whether we go through it or not at the beginning of each meeting, this is how we do our work as the art of community. All right, so now we will get into the bulk of the rest of the meeting. And so we will go through a brief history of the EEAC here. So again, this will be a refresher for those that have been on the committee and kind of just a history lesson for those who are new. Also, as I go through this slide, while I did my best to gather my notes and recollect everything as much as I could, I know that there are some people on here who have been on these committees since the beginning, so if I missed anything or if you want to add, please feel free to step in. And then lastly, after we go through this slide at the end of it, for those who have been on the committee for a couple of years now, I would like for you to possibly share any words of wisdom or your thoughts on your experience on the committee for some of the newer people. All right, so the origin of this committee started in 2020. And at that time, in response to increased incidents of hate speech in our schools and societal unrest that was going on at the time, students in our district submitted a petition to the board to create and adopt a bias incident and hate speech policy. The board worked through that summer of 2020, and they adopted this new bias incident and hate speech policy on August 24th in 2020. Along with establishing the district's stance against incidents of bias and hate speech in our schools, this new policy also created a new process for schools to follow with the inclusion of EASH plans and their continuous improvement plans. I'll get to EASH in a second, as well as the creation of an EASH committee to provide guidance and oversight of the district's work towards addressing bias incidents and hate speech in our schools. So EASH stands for Education, Accountability, Solutions, and Healing. And the inclusion of this aspect in the policy was due to work done by students in the school district to help define the process by which schools should address incidents of bias and hate in our school. We'll get more to this later when we start to review schools' EASH plans, so I won't go into a lot of detail quite yet, but later on we will review schools' EASH plans, where we'll get into more detail about what all that entails. So the EASH committee, which was required, started that year of the 2021-2022 school year, and it included 1 or 2 members of the board, I can't remember for sure, students and community members. That first year was just really a learning process for all of us because it was brand new and we were all learning. My recollection from that, and again, others can feel free to step in, was that we spent a lot of time familiarizing with ourselves as well as the requirements of the committee. And I think providing as much guidance as we could as far as what we wanted to see in schools' EASH plans. I think that was the bulk of the work that we did that year. But again, I'm open to other people sharing from what their recollection was. The following year, in 2021, the Oregon Senate passed Senate Bill 732, which mandated the creation of educational equity advisory committees in school districts. These are also called district equity committees in some places as well. Larger school districts with 10,000 plus students had to adopt this first, so that included Tigard-Tualatin, while smaller school districts came later. I believe they were required this last school year, or at the beginning of this year, I think. 2024, was that? Oh, 2025. Okay, so this upcoming year, my apologies. So 2025 is when the rest of the school districts have to set up their district equity committees. So due to the large overlap of duties between the EASH committee, which had gone on for 1 year, and this new required committee, the EASH committee members and board met to talk about and agreed to merge the two, but specifically saying we want to continue to do the EASH committee work, but then also do what's required as the EEAC. So the 2022-23 school year was the first year of the EEAC and was chaired by Brad Dorsey here, and I'm very thankful that he is still with us. And that year, we built on a bit what we did previously with the EASH committee. And while it was a big learning year, we also actually got a lot of work done as well. One of the big things that we'll talk about a little bit when we talk about the work that we do each year was we reviewed the district's annual equity audit, provided feedback, and we invited some cabinet members to come present and talk about their progress on it. And so that's, while we don't annually review the equity audit, we do bring cabinet members here to present on their progress towards that every year. And then last year, I became chair of the committee, and we continued to build upon the work that we did the previous year. And it culminated in the committee's first annual report that was delivered to the school board at the end of last school year. And so that brings us to this school year. And the hope for this school year is to build a little bit more on what we did last year to create a structured annual cycle that can be, pretty easily replicated to not just make the best use of our time together, but to also make it easier for others to take this work on in the future. Because I like this, I love doing this work, but I won't be around forever. So somebody else will need to take this on and want to make it as easy as possible for whoever comes in next. And so that is the brief history of the committee. Again, I want to give committee members that have been here a while an opportunity to share their experiences and provide any words of wisdom.
Yeah, just to follow up on what the chair has said, this opportunity in this committee and the EASH committee has just been a true joy, seeing exactly how this school district works in incorporating equity and having an impact on equitable processes and actually presenting in front of the board, being a part of board activities that can affect the student population from an equity lens has just been a true pleasure. And I look forward to what this board or what this committee will accomplish this year. As every year, there's a lot to do and a lot to be done. So I'm very excited to see what we do this year.
I would say that I wish it was just at first, but if you are not an educator, there's a lot of terminology that will be used throughout the meetings and looking at data. don't be afraid to ask what those terms are, those acronyms. There's a million acronyms in education. And if I wasn't a teacher in this district, I would probably be very overwhelmed with the language that was used. But I would say, don't be afraid to ask. Everyone here is, in this work together, and we all want to understand what we're looking at. So that would be my biggest piece of advice.
I just want to add that it's so impressive to have student voice on this committee. Even going back to the work around hate speech and the work around the EASH policy, but that we continue to have a presence of student voice on this committee is powerful.
There's there's no student here today, but there will be a student at future meetings. Yes, and we are looking to we're recruiting more students as well. Yeah.
What grade are you, like, is there a mandatory grade level the student has to be?
That's a good question. I don't know that we've ever established that. I mean, typically we recruit at the high school level, but I mean, I don't know. Would we take middle schoolers, Octavia? I don't know. Sorry to put that on you, Octavia.
That's okay. I mean, I guess that's to the committees, what you guys feel like, but me serving the middle school, I would be very selective around like maybe keeping it to like 8th grade, and seeing that as an interest from 8th graders. So yeah.
Yeah, I think from any word of wisdom that I would have, and kind of back to the art of community, is that it can get messy at times, and maybe not the word messy, but uncomfortable. Kind of piggybacking also like the acronyms and whatnot. Like we will be asked to review large amounts of data in a short time frame, and those exercises for me are very uncomfortable because I like to slow down to think and reflect, but we don't have that luxury sometimes. But that's why there's a lot of us here, right? So that if everybody is looking at a piece of data for 5 minutes and everybody puts together, 1 or 2 points, we're getting a lot of information that way. But it still can be a very uncomfortable process. I would also like to open it to any of the new members and even to some of the members who came on in the middle of last year. I mean, is there anything that's resonating with you, or any questions that you have from listening to the timeline and hearing anything from us talk about our experiences?
I do have a question. I came towards the end of last year, and we did a lot of reviewing and feedback on I think it was the EASH report. Is there an opportunity for us to bring to the committee things that do not seem equitable within the district?
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the charges of this committee is to bring forth, like, if we see or hear anything that we believe demonstrates inequitable practices within the school district, yes, that is our opportunity to bring it up to the school board.
And is that an agenda item? How would we do that?
Good question. I mean, I am always open to agenda topics. So if there's anything that you observe that you want to talk about, send it to me and Xenia. We can talk about it. We can make it an agenda topic, and we can discuss it in one of our meetings.
Okay.
But yeah.
For example, last year, the chair would open up by saying, if you have any insights from either, because I think you would share like community events or like listening sessions or community discussions. And as community members, if you're hearing something, that would be when you would bring it up in the opening. So we just didn't really practice that as often because I think people were just a little overwhelmed, right? But that should be the cadence of our time together. At the start, the chair will always say, okay, we had how many is there an update? So he'll always ask for updates from subcommittees or folks that have gone to some of those community sessions. That would be the appropriate time to bring that up.
Yeah, I like that idea. Right now on the agenda, I usually have upcoming opportunities to listen and participate at the end. We can definitely do that at the beginning because I think that also kind of fits in line with like what the board does in terms of like reporting out on stuff that they have done before we dive into the work. So yeah. Any other questions or observations? Oh, Diane, did you want to say something?
It has nothing to do with this. That's why I was like, oh, never mind. Is it possible that we could have name tags or name tents, you know, just like in the front so
yes.
we can learn each other's names?
Good call out. Yes. We will definitely get on that. All right. Any other questions or observations? No? All right. Oh. All right. We will be passing out the what are those called? Nameplates. Yes, not name tags, nameplates. All right. Yeah. So now we'll talk about some highlights and reviewing some of last year's work. And so what I plan on doing here is from the annual report, each of these sections we culminated with 2 to 3 recommendations to the board. And so I'll just call those out as refreshers and reminders to returning committee members, and again as education for the new members. Additionally, for new members, a lot of this work that I'm going to talk about is going to be standard work for us that we're going to do again this year, with the exception of one of the items. All right, and I guess lastly, what I would say, excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. For the new committee members, I would like to give you a little homework, and that would be to ask you to read the annual report that was delivered to the board last year. After this section, I can show where that could be found in our shared drive, but it can also be found on the district website. If you just search for EEAC annual report, you'll be able to find it on the website. All right, so some of the work that we did were the reviewing of the continuous improvement in EASH plans. And the highlights from that work, or at least are the highlights of our recommendations, is the need to include quarterly bias incident and hate speech numbers in school newsletters, so the ones that go out for each school to parents, as well as district numbers in the district letters that go out to the community. So this is so that, those numbers are transparent so that everybody in the community can have an understanding of what's going on in our schools regarding bias incidents and hate speech. We noted that there's more work that needs to be done to increase attendance, but we did see in schools continuous improvement plans that they do have some plans to address that, and so we hope to see some progress. We also are aware that the district conducts listening sessions, and that we would like to see the feedback and the qualitative data from those listening sessions. As far as the school resource officer oversight, so that's another body of work that this committee is responsible for, is oversight of the SRO program. We asked or recommended if there's a way to track how well students are transitioning between school levels, so like elementary to middle and middle to high school, in order to see if prior school behavior is being carried over into a new school. We'd also like to see and hear about more opportunities for SROs to be present in school community settings in a dress down situation, so out of uniform. Like we understand the reason for and the purpose for the uniform, but any opportunities that they can be present in casual attire is we'd like to see that. And last year, it was great to hear about listening sessions and surveys that were done in our schools with staff and students. But we would also like to see more community or parent and caregiver listening sessions and surveys so that we can see if anything has moved or changed since the last time that was performed in 2020, 2021. And lastly, for the SROs, while it was clarified that the data we reviewed did include elementary school data, I mean, there wasn't a lot there, which we wouldn't really expect, but we would like to hear a little bit more as like, okay, how do they interact with elementary schools? You know, what goes on there? What are the expectations? And then another body of work that we do that carried over from the EASH committee is reviewing bias incident and hate speech data. A big observation there is that incident data needs to be separated out into single instance originators versus repeat originators. Excuse me. The goal here is to paint a more informative picture on if incidents of bias and hate speech is like a widespread issue, like many people are doing it, or if it's contained to certain individuals. I don't know if anybody has a cough drop, but I mean, if you do, I would take one. Oh, thank you very much. We also noted that there are some discrepancies in the data that indicates the appearance of different reporting standards and bias incidents and hate speech across schools. Wow, thank you very much. And teamwork, you guys are awesome. I appreciate that. I should have brought my own. I will come more prepared next time. I talk a lot for my job, and I have some on my desk at home. So. All right, so sorry about that, but thank you. So yeah, sticking with the reviewing of bias incidents and hate speech, again, there were some discrepancies in the data that indicated some schools were not reporting the information the same. So for example, one elementary school would only have minor incidents, while another elementary school had nothing but major incident reports. So it demonstrates, you know, they're not using the same level of determining, you know, which is what. So I wanted to see more consistency there. All right, cabinet roundtable, like I mentioned before, and I might kick this over to Zinnia for a second to help explain and elaborate what we mean when we talk about cabinet. So again, like I said, after reviewing the annual equity audit, we asked members of the cabinet to come present on their progress and what they're doing to achieve the goals in the annual equity audit, as well as the strategic plan. But Zinnia, would you be willing to elaborate on, like, when we say cabinet, who are we talking about?
I might hand that over to Dr. McCall since she oversees cabinet.
So cabinet members represent our superintendent, myself, and our directors of student services, directors equity and inclusion, and as well as directors for teaching and learning, operations, and HR. So it's about 11, and then communications and our CFO. And the roundtable, if I recall, we have a strategic plan that has three major tenets. One is student achievement, the other one is climate and culture, and the other one is talent. And so under each of the tenets, there were initiatives. And so cabinet members who were in charge or the leads of the initiatives under some of the three tenets were invited to do part of a roundtable where they gave a presentation of their work. For example, teaching and learning, student services did a presentation around PBIS under the MTSS system. And so,
Yes.
gosh, multi-tiered systems of support. And positive behavior intervention supports, where our schools use the data to look at disproportionate discipline. And also they had perception surveys where students took surveys and they shared how they feel about school. So both qualitative and quantitative data from that group And then HR did a presentation around workforce diversity, and that was very positive. And then I think we also did food service presentation.
Mhm. Yes. Thank you, Dr. McCall. Yeah, and so last year when we did the cabinet roundtable, the format was more in helping them create a SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And again, having the cabinet come present to us and talk about their progress is something that we're going to want to continue to do. But in the lens of wanting to, kind of standardize something, I think this is one thing where, like, we've done it differently the last couple of years. So I think this year we'll try and figure out, like, okay, well, how do we want to do it and continue to do it that way in the future. The next body of work that we did last year, well, I guess it's body of work. We had the food services manager, Kim Leung, come present to us, which was an incredible learning experience for all of us. And it stemmed from one of the first meetings of the EEAC last school year, where, and we'll probably do this in the November meeting, asking everybody, what do you want to see, listen, and do in the committee this next year? Yes, we have these things that we're going to do no matter what, but, like, is there anything that's, kind of eating at you that you have questions about? And the topic of food came up, and so from multiple people. And so we invited the food services manager to come give us an education and tell us about the system and what's going on. Again, it was very educational for all of us. One big takeaway from me is, like, again, I love to learn, and I learned a lot about it, such that when I see in the news today or recently over the last couple of weeks that schools in our state, districts in our state, almost all of them, like 94% of them, now have CEP, remind me, community, I forget what CEP stands for, so that's another one of those acronyms, but it's the program that helps offer free food to our schools. And so we learned about that last year. Yes, community eligibility provision. Yes, that sounds correct. Yeah, so if I hadn't, if we hadn't had that presentation, I wouldn't have really known that. And if I saw the news, I'd be like, oh, that's cool, but I don't know what they're talking about. So it was really cool. So with that being said, is there some other thing going on in the school district that you would like to learn more about, right? When it comes to food in our school district, there's a lot of equity impacts there, right? Ensuring that, kids that are hungry are getting food that they need so that they can perform, so they can, come to school prepared and willing with a desire to learn, right? So is there anything else like that? Not saying we have to do it, but just something that popped in my head, like transportation. I don't know if there's any questions or concerns about transportation, but something similar. Go ahead, Lauren.
So I'm curious about, like, the security that they do, or the drills or things like that they do in the schools. We could have those people present.
I will make note of that. That is a good one. Yeah, Jarvis, that's what I was thinking.
Curious about, like, after school programs. Like, for instance, we were at Metzger last year, now we're at CF Tigard. And, I was still in the Metzger email list at the end of summer, and they announced, oh, we're doing this after school soccer event, everybody, for the kids. And I reached out and I said, oh, my kid would love to still do that. And they're like, well, you can't do it because you're not going to our school. But at CF Tigard, they don't do anything like that. So I'm just curious, like, who says, like, is it up to the schools to decide what's happening after school? So yes, that's basically it.
Awesome. This is great. Yeah.
I
Go ahead,
would
Daniel.
love to explore more about the food services. I was honestly shocked to learn that my son's lunch is at 10:30 in the morning, which he comes home and he has food available to him. But what about the kids that don't, where this is their one meal a day at 10:30 in the morning? I would like to discuss that.
Thank you. That's awesome. I'm taking these notes so that we can talk about looking at this stuff and talking about it in the future.
I'm also curious about the foundation, right? Am I saying that right? The the Tigard Foundation, and just learning more about what they bring to our district and how to access those services.
Yep.
Do you want me to go through my list, or do you?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. For after-school activities in middle school, at least at Fowler, they were first come, first serve, and for a lot of families, and especially for sixth graders, sixth graders to be responsible to get themselves signed up and bring in $20 and a signed permission slip. First come, first serve is challenging, resulted in calls to the principal. As well as, I've got a neurodiverse child, so we've got issues with him being able to focus to get that done. So that's one of my issues. Another is around communication. That no. There's at least 3 different ways that they communicate to parents, and having the bandwidth. I mean, I'm a working parent. I'm sure I work one job. There are other families who work multiple jobs. Having the bandwidth to keep up with all of those methods of communication, I don't know how. I have one child also, so having multiple children and other challenges to try and keep up with that. And when I spoke with the principal, she said, please escalate that, as in I don't have control over that. So I'm escalating. I think that's my list for now.
Yes, the communication one resonates with me as well. I have one kid, but I've thought about that too. I was like, man, I'm busy, and like I get these emails all the time, and like I'm doing my best to check them all, and like, man, there's a lot. Right, and they just introduced a new one this year. Yeah, Parent Square. Yeah.
This is probably going to show how much I missed last part of the year, but I'm definitely a data and kind of tracking person, so I kind of want to know what has come out of I can't remember what it's called, but the bullying policy that we worked on at the end of last.
Are you talking about the acts of violence,
Yes,
the students' acts of aggression and violence?
Yes. I kind of want to know, as that was put into place, what has come from that.
One of the things I want to dive deeper into was one of the topics from the cabinet roundtable was learning outcomes and academic data. I remember this one specific point really jumped at me, was about how Latinx students are disproportionately identified for special education, and so I just kind of want to see what's the update on that, and how do we know which students are we serving well academically and which ones are not?
I have one more. You prompted me. iReady scores apparently don't follow from one school to the next. So from a data perspective, I cannot compare 5th grade scores to 6th grade scores because they're at a different school. Which sort of negates having it all in one system.
What you said just prompted me. I know this year they've rolled out like the math iReady. That's new, I believe, this year. So I'm just more curious about, and I don't know if this is the committee for that, but I just want to hear more like what is it similar to the reading iReady, or is it different? Yeah.
Just that's interesting to me because at CFT last year we did math iReady. So if they didn't do it at Metzger, I don't know if that was district-wide.
Really? Maybe.
Yeah.
I can clarify really quick.
We did it at Metzger last year, so that's why this year I'm like, is this new? Okay, thanks for that.
I can clarify
clarification.
really quick. So iReady is our diagnostic measure, and we've had that for the past few years. We adopted iReady math curriculum for this year. Yeah. Yeah. So that's like the big, yeah. Yeah. We had a different curriculum for the past few years. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Like I said, I've been taking notes, and yes, Zinnia and I have some takeaways where we will talk about this stuff. All right, and I think the touch on subcommittees then right now, and we don't have to. I can try and put Octavia, Nina on the spot if you guys are comfortable talking about your committees from last year. And just as a highlight for the new committee members, we do have subcommittees where the subcommittee leads will have meetings outside of this meeting, maybe once every other month or something like that, to do some of this extra work, because like Brad mentioned earlier, there's a lot of work to do and we can't get it all done within this committee. So we have subcommittees. Last year we had the Equity Funds Dispersal Subcommittee, and Octavia, would you mind talking about this one?
Yeah, so this was just a committee about maybe 4 or 5 of us, and we were able to get some proposals from different groups. We had the National Honor Society, marching band. We had some extracurricular activities for middle school, and then we had the unified sports teams at the high school. Last year, we were able to fund about $48,000 to support after-school activities. And I think we are not doing that this year. Am I correct? Yeah. Just because I think some of the reviews from the board is like how are we equitably supporting and giving out these funds, and I don't know if we could really track that successfully. So that's one of the reasons why we opted to not do that this year.
And I wanted to add too, there's been a parallel conversation with the board related to pay to play fees, and then also this came about with student advocacy that the high school students were running like a community process. In that process, one of the things that was brought up was although the focus is on pay to play for high school, a lot of the community members had posed a question around middle school activities. So it kind of connects with the conversation that you all were having here related to right now. I think the idea of like first come first serve is due to like budget restraints and things like that. But that's not to say we don't question kind of like that policy and process for which to offer activities. But the board is talking about an investment potentially in middle school because the whole purpose of pay to play and the extracurricular equity funds was really to connect students with people, passions, and projects that allows students to feel engaged and connected in school. So I just want you to know those are the things that are coming up this year, and we'll keep you updated as the board works through that this year.
I was just wondering if that committee would be open to having some of those funds go towards community events at elementary schools that focus on bringing in the families of people who speak other languages. Is that part of the role of that? Would that be an appropriate use of those funds?
I think typically it was for just high school. And then I think as a group, we kind of decided to let it foster into the middle school. And I think from there, kind of like what Zinnia was bringing up, we were like, well, where do we need to focus on? And I think we are now at the stage where we're focused on middle school. And I think that is a topic that I think is coming up, like, where do we need to start? Because I feel like what was coming from that conversation is that starting at high school is way too late. So that may be a conversation in the future, but I think we're currently at the middle school level right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing and talking about that, Octavia. And like Octavia mentioned, unfortunately, we won't have this subcommittee this year since we don't have those funds. Um, but it doesn't mean, like like we were just talking about, doesn't mean that the school district isn't looking at the impact that we were trying to make with those funds, right? So we are still looking at that. And I know that last year, members of the EEAC were invited to some board work sessions where they were talking about pay-to-play fees and that type of stuff. It is possible, possibly somewhat likely, that we would receive a similar invitation in the future to board work sessions where those things are going to be talked about. So again, when I learn about those, or Dr. learns about those, we will let the committee know and say that people would be willing to show up to those sessions. So another one of our subcommittees is the policy subcommittee, which is led by Nina. And that one I would anticipate continuing on this year. So feel free, Nina, to talk about it.
Good to know. Thank you. So last year and the previous year, we looked at 4 different policies. The first policy that we looked at was defining the charge of the EEAC. Since this is a new committee, we were looking at what the responsibilities of this committee would be. And then we looked at the bias incident complaint procedures for both staff and students. And then towards the end of last year, or the middle of last year, we were looking at the students' acts of violence and aggression policy. And when we're going over these policies, we're looking for clarity in language. We're making suggestions to the board about timelines and different aspects. And so we're just another set of eyes for the board, and then we submit our suggestions. And so that's really what it looks like. And we work in small groups. The meetings are extra from these community meetings, and so it would be another part of your month.
Thank you, Nina. Another thing that I want to add to from the previous one and previous point and this point here. We'll talk about this later on when we have our conversation around our EASH process, but one of the things that have come out of all of these discussions and all of these conversations have been changes to our continuous improvement plans at school. So for instance, Brad has always had a great saying around, are we just admiring the problem, or are we going to actually do some like reflective action and things like that? And so given some of that feedback, you'll see in the new continuous improvement plans, it looks a lot different. There's going to be a portion where because of the feedback that was received, the administrators and school teams will be taking a look at their change ideas and then saying whether did it work well enough to adopt? Did they have to adapt it, or did they abandon it? And they're going to give you reasoning for those things, and you'll see that in the continuous improvement plans this year. So then you're seeing kind of a reflection of practice as opposed to just reporting. And then under the EASH section, there was a lot of questions around preventative, proactive processes and communication. So there are some clear deliverables that the schools are going to be having. They're going to put their EASH plan on their web page so that it's a little bit more accessible than just in the continuous improvement plan. So then you have like broader communication around that, and they're going to reflect on lessons learned as they navigate and support that. So that all came from kind of your feedback. You'll see that. And then the other thing around policies, that connects back to when, as this committee will be reviewing kind of almost like a tracker of incidences that have occurred in departments and schools that had gotten to the degree of like our district equity leadership team. And then if it gets to that point, there's going to be a mitigation plan, meaning if it impacts the individual, like what is done related to that, if it impacts vicariously, like if somebody witnessed it in the classroom, in the hallway, in the lunchroom, there should be a mitigation plan for that too. So you'll see kind of like that progress on that. And then that feeds into the systemic process. And I bring all that up because we had some incidences in schools where the tension between freedom of speech and impact on students, families, and sometimes subs in the building brought up a conversation around what's the rights of staff and students in freedom of speech, and where does that impact potential bias? Does that make sense? And so and how social media might also be impacted to that. So that might lend itself to policy review. So we might take a look at the staff policy around social media. Does that make sense? So like all those things will trigger kind of like a policy analysis that would come up because of those mitigation plans. Okay, so then you see an active process in which we will review the policies connected to those issues.
Yeah, and I think what Zenia just talked about is a good example of how there's a lot of work to do. And so that's why we do have these subcommittees. So when it comes to policy review, sometimes we will review all policy, we will review policy as the greater committee, like we did last year for the student acts of aggression and violence. We did review that in a full committee meeting. But there's so much other policy review that needs to be done that's why we have a subcommittee for it. So yeah, a lot of work that needs to be done around policy. So thank you, Nina, for leading that effort. And then the last subcommittee, at least from last year, was the annual report subcommittee, and that was, as it says, it was for typing up and putting together the annual report. And since last year was the first year of doing the annual report, it was a decently sized lift. And so if you haven't read it yet, it's about 30 pages long, maybe 26 or something like that. But it's a pretty long document. I do anticipate this subcommittee will meet again this upcoming year, but I don't think it'll be as big of a lift because we now have like a, template, so to speak, for the annual report. So we have like the introduction sections and whatnot, which will all pretty much stay the same, and it'll just be populating the data work that we do. So it should be a lot easier, but we'll still have this subcommittee this upcoming year as well. All right, and so going on to the next slide then and talking about what, again, this is also from the annual report as far as what we said that we would like to do in this upcoming year. So we would like to create a new subcommittee called the Communication Subcommittee that would be focused on updating the EEAC website. I mean, we do have a landing page and a website on the district page right now, but we would like to update it, including adding an ability for people in the community, like students and staff, to submit comments and whatnot and concerns to the committee that this subcommittee would then review and bring to the greater committee. Another recommendation from discussions last year, kind of back to policy, is similar to how there's a requirement for the EEAC, again, state mandate, where one of us has to be on the budget committee. And again, like Henry said, that is Henry. So we have a representative here from this committee that's on the budget committee. We think it would be a really good idea to have an EEAC member present at board policy development meetings. So I don't know how often they have those, but they do have them. And so when they do discuss policy and creation of policy, we did ask, and at least it seemed, the board did seem receptive to it. So we would like to have an EEAC member present at those meetings. And then lastly, from reviewing schools' continuous improvement plans, it was clear that some schools were creating different solutions to challenges that they were facing. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach, and some schools were reporting successes on the stuff that they were doing. Like, hey, we're doing this here at Tualatin High School, and it's been working and whatnot. we would like schools to come present to the committee those successes. Like, hey, we implemented this new program or this new thing, and we're seeing positive results. We would like to hear that here at the committee so that, when we provide our recommendations, we don't want all of our recommendations to be like, you need to get better at this. Like, yes, we need to do that. But it would also be nice to say, hey, this is working really well over here. Maybe could it work well somewhere else, right? Like, try and build upon what's going well. So hopefully we can have schools come present on their successes. All right, I think we will skip the next part about doing the shared overview part. So I can talk about it just real quick. But for the new members that just got their TTSD accounts, which I think for now that's you, Lauren, because I think Barb already has one. But when you should have access to our shared folder location when you do have a device. Okay, cool, awesome. Lauren's good at Google and whatnot. And so for future meetings, it's not absolutely necessary, but it is helpful at times to bring a device so that we will do some work where it is easier, where we have a centralized document where we share our 4Cs protocol information and whatnot. So it's fine that if people didn't bring some tonight. So, and we can talk about that stuff later. All right, and so with that, we are going to go into practice. Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah. Zinnia is recommending that we take a moment to process all the stuff that we went through, like even for returning members. I know we just talked about a lot, including, I appreciate people sharing their thoughts about what they would like to learn and talk about this year. So, yeah. So we can do another round robin again. So now that we've talked some more and gone over some stuff, now what are your thoughts about this committee?
The thought I have is I love the idea of having schools come and presenting, but what that brings up for me is, will there be elementary schools here? Because I feel like a lot of our focus is just on middle school and high school, and I want to hear elementary input. And I get it, like there's not really SRO officers at the elementary level, but I want to hear successes for elementary schools too.
I'll piggyback on that. Sorry. As an elementary school teacher, what I noticed as I was reading through the annual report was that there was a lot of focus on the high school and middle school, and I feel like there's a lot that can be done that is more proactive in the elementary schools, and that would be a nice place to put some focus this year.
I have a question about listening sessions. What are those? Where are they? How do we get involved with that?
I think they happen all the time in our district. And they can happen in like a local schools initiative. One of the things that we'll talk a little bit more about, although we might not be having the dispersal committee, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to weave in a lot of your feedback into the infrastructure of equity work within our district. So for instance, you'll see a little bit later when we do kind of a data review and also just some historical documents, artifacts for how this committee came to be. Around the Ish committee had given like six recommendations, and we've been using those six recommendations to improve and embed like equity work within our district over the last 4 years, three years. So accurate data about bias incidents. So along the lines with when Marissa, right, you had asked about the policy. So in the continuous improvement plans now they have data that tracks aggression and acts of aggression discipline referrals. So you'll start seeing that as well as part in the data review that we'll have. So you'll see how that connects. And then the other parts are staff training, interrupting bias incidents, response to incidences, family and caregiver partnership, improve communication and community members, and then addressing anti-Blackness racism. These are all the things that came up in the EASH recommendations. And so schools have local listening sessions. So like they might have invitations to affinity alliance groups or families for which the system is not serving very well yet. So to be able to hear feedback from families, you can have it that way. Dr. Udasanada is also having community conversations, and that's also like a mini. Not yeah, that could be that's more informal. So that's a more informal like sit and chat. Listening sessions are a little bit more strategic and focused because what we want to do is ask the same question across different groups of constituents, students, families, community members, so that we can use that information. Oh, okay. Maybe because your school didn't communicate that yet.
Is that kind of like when we did review the budget, when I first came on, you had the different sessions with like the parents of middle school or the parents of high schoolers. And we would sit and look at different parts of the plans or listen to presentations about them and then give feedback about it.
Yes. And that's connected to a task and an objective, but also it can also just be listening to families. I know that the high schools have listening sessions. It's interesting that the middle schools, you haven't heard that. We have Octavia here, that she can work with the team to kind of try to figure out why that's not happening. Do you want to share something about that?
I was just going to share the opportunity for them to be able to participate in the one that Dr. Ethan's going to do. So he will be having 2 more, and if you haven't heard about it and or been a part of the first 2 that they've had, but it will be, what is the date for this? Oh, yeah. So October 30th is one, and October 23rd is the next one, and then the 23rd will be at the 23rd be at
23rd is at Tualatin.
At Tualatin, and the 30th is
and
at
the 30th is at Tigard.
From 6 to 8.
Are they called listening sessions? What is the event actually called?
This one is called Community Conversations.
I think that's the
Yeah.
confusion.
But there's a portion in there where he asks questions and you give feedback. It's a individual circles and you're with the table group and you're giving feedback.
Is there a way to add these listening sessions? And this was something I wanted last year too. Can we update our calendar to like reflect more of these listening sessions and like board meetings and things that we could be a part of, like on our calendar right now?
EEAC calendar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I would like to add, maybe kind of in that same vein, why not just have like a general TTSD calendar where everyone can see all the different community events that are going on? So, yeah.
Yes, I remember we talked about that last year too. And because like, what was it? Yeah, and because what was it? I was able to confirm the dates of the community conversations. That was like, I went to the district's website, calendar, click, looked at it. There's not a lot on this calendar, but those things are on there. So yeah. So when you go to the district calendar, yeah, see there it is. Thor's pulling it up. So yeah, it's like no school days and that type of stuff. So this main one on the district website does not get into that level of detail that we've been talking about. And so with that being said, though, I mean, again, this was brought up last year, and one of those challenges is with all the schools, like all the schools will have their own nights, their own things. Putting all that on one calendar would be pretty overwhelming for everybody. So how do you create something that would work for everybody? But yeah, that's definitely something we can look into and talk about.
I think that's good feedback for our family and community pillar group, because even if you haven't heard it from directly from your school, there should be, I mean, we always have community sessions, especially during like winter and spring. So that's good information for us to share with our family partnership advocates and our office staff to be able to push that out to families. But also trying to get that balance around how much communication is being sent out as well. Yeah, that's part of the things that we're trying to work with our FPAs to be able to push out for those newsletters.
I'm smiling because a lot of times it's at the very, when I get the weekly updates, it's at the very bottom. It's yeah, sometimes they have all the dates listed there.
Yeah, yeah, and in my experience, like, I mean, yes, schools, if they're going to have their own listening sessions, it typically would be in their own newsletter. I feel like the district-wide newsletter, I think, does a little bit better of job of putting out any things that are more open to district-wide, like, hey, listening sessions and that type of stuff.
Where was that calendar that you were just showing that? Yeah. Oh, she.
One thing I was going to say is that I really appreciate just how the reporting has been raised, disaggregated data has been shared among members of this committee. And also, one way we can use our new website would be to create maybe a bi-monthly newsletter with not just information from an equitable lens, but also books, you know, resources people might want to look into if that, strikes their fancy. I want to know more about this topic or that topic. Maybe having a form on our website that we already talked about for community engagement that we can bring to the meeting and talk about and disseminate among ourselves. But anyone online training that might be free or community-based training, we can put that on the website. You can see I'm very, very website centered because that's a medium that a lot of people can just go to and get a fire hose of all the information available. And that way they don't have to use this app or that app or get confused on what's being available from an equity lens. So that's something we may want to consider too.
I love this. I wasn't planning on or anticipating doing as much proactive work and like identifying what we're going to do for the year. I was thinking we are going to do that in our November meeting. So I appreciate all of this. Yes, we are an active group. All right. So
I
with
have
that,
another question.
Oh yeah,
about
go ahead, Barb.
Excuse me, sorry. The listening committees, are they part of the equity committee in the group? Okay. And then has there been a concerted effort to reach out to the different communities, especially with translators in case those are necessary?
I mean, in my experience, the few that I've been on, like they do try and make sure that there are translators present if that's necessary. But Zinnia, do you want to add anything to that?
So we through wisdom of practice, instead of having translators, we have facilitators who facilitate in the like native language of for which families are comfortable. So it just feels different when you have somebody who's also aware of like what's happening and you're facilitating that conversation. People feel more comfortable. They feel more, seen, supported. And so we do a lot of small group facilitation. So we have gone away from the big group presentations because those feel very cold and not really, you know, again, not centering our art of community. So what you'll notice is, you know, we'll be set up in small groups, and then the facilitator will have a mini training where we will kind of walk through, here's how we're going to facilitate this conversation, here's the questions we're going to ask. So that makes that whole like same questions, you know, and really have more time for the community members to speak rather than us speaking. And what was your first question about? Is this part of equity?
Yeah, does this committee lead that?
Does this committee lead that? Or in general, is it an equity issue?
I know it's an equity issue. I was just wondering who was the lead on those conversations.
Well, there's different departments. For example, the community ones that the last two, and there's two more that schedule. The communication department has been kind of taking the lead on that. But like Zinnia said, part of that is those facilitators who speak the language, and we just had two over the last couple of weeks that, and we'll have more. For example, when we did the integrated guidance work around our application, we held listening sessions to get multiple perspectives and using protocols and for folks to share from their perspective what what's working well from their lens in TTSD, but also an opportunity to share what are some challenges, and also asking constituents, what can we do better?
So to answer that too, this is part of our district effort to get voice data from our community. So we had anticipated on having some time to review some artifacts around like voice data from our community from 2018 that kind of kicked off our focus on community voice listening sessions. And then we have one for our bias and hate speech process. And then what you'll find is that data will also be shared broadly. So we can bring that, the insights from those community conversations also to bring to this group for review as well.
All right. Well, again, I really appreciate all the conversation and feedback that we've had tonight already. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. We normally go to, there have been times where we go to 8:15. Technically, it's supposed to go to 8 with 15 minutes in case there's public comment. We've not had public comment before, so sometimes we've gone to 8:15. Yeah, I want to be mindful of people's time. And we were originally going to do like a practice and training on ABC and 4Cs protocol, but we will save that for the November 25th meeting instead, which is totally fine. So yeah, so for the November 25th meeting, we'll be doing some of that training on the ABCs and 4Cs protocol and maybe first thoughts, second thoughts. We'll talk about subcommittees. So we've introduced subcommittees, so think about that. If you want to be on one of the subcommittees, that'll be the time to say, hey, I'd like to be on that one. And again, we would like to do a communication subcommittee, and so that will need a lead. It's just somebody who would be the person to set up the meetings outside of this one and to facilitate those. So we can talk about that next month as well. And can't make any promises, but I'm hoping to have our new superintendent, Dr. Udo Sinadad, to come talk to us. He played Dr. McCall's role down in Salem Kaiser as the liaison between their EEAC and the school district. And so I personally would like to hear about his experience and whatnot, and see if there's anything that he would ask of us, like what would he like us to consider or look at. So hopefully he can show up for that. Yes, Zinnia is recommending doing a closing exercise, which I like that, given that we do have a little bit of time. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I was hoping that one of the important components of this committee is like equity of voice. So we're going to do a lot of protocols where everybody has a chance to share what's coming up for them and so forth. So we didn't get to do the ABC protocol, affirm, Broadner conflict, or the 4Cs protocol, which is connections, clarifications, conflict, and calibration. But we can do a first thought, second thought. So today's the first day that we're together. You can jot this down or you have a minute. But at first, I thought the EAC was going to be, and now I'm thinking, because you heard a little bit about we're going to be doing together. So I'll give you a minute. At first, I thought the EEAC was going to be. Now I'm thinking. And then if we can take a minute to just think about that, and then we'll just go around so everybody has their voice in this space would be great. All right. Who would like to start? And then you'll get to pick to go left or go right, and then we'll just go around. Okay?
I would say at first I thought the EEAC was going to be a lot of the same folks that normally do it, and as we know, doing the work like this it can get tiresome. So it's very. I'm just happy to see new faces to be able to pass on some of this work and collectively do it and support our district. You want to go this way? Sorry.
I came in the middle of last year, maybe even towards the end of last year. So I guess I just thought it would be more of the same of what we did last year, those last few months. And now I'm seeing that it's much broader. A little bit of confusion. So like, wait, so we can bring a laundry list here and just like, explore all those things. So I'm not really sure exactly what to think about those. But still happy to be here.
At first, I thought the EEAC was going to be reviewing policies to make sure they were equitable, and now I think it is that, but it's more. To me, I'm wanting to do more community engagement, involvement, and hearing others' voices.
At first, I thought it was going to be like very information heavy, and now I feel like it's more action based.
Yeah, I piggyback to that too because I came in the last ending of the school year. So I thought it was just practically, just overview of everything about the school district. But now seeing that it's about a little bit of everything, a vibe of everything, it's pretty excited to overview everything.
At first, I thought it would be more like the end of last year when I came in, which was a lot of editing. And I'm happy to see that will be more actionable.
Well, my first thought about tonight's meeting was, given the long summer break, I wasn't sure how it was going to go and I was a little anxious. But then my second thought is that I'm reminded that I'm surrounded by awesome people who are passionate about this work and are all the ones who are making it happen. So thank you.
At first, I thought that we would be reviewing what we did last year and adding to it. And then I was glad I was right.
My first thought was quite honestly just worried because of how much time I missed and not sure honestly what to expect. But I'm really happy to see how much it's grown, how much more there is to do. I'm excited about that.
At first, I thought the EAC was going to be smaller, but now I see that it's not, and I'm really happy about that. That especially that we have so many returners, and I'm just excited to continue doing this work with you all.
Oh, thank you. At first, I thought the EEAC would be comprised of members that just fully agreed on all topics, but my thinking has been challenged in so many great ways, and so I've grown from it. And also, I'm hearing a lot of passion regarding communication, so if you wanted to create your subcommittee on communication, that is always a possibility.
And Dr. McCall asked me to go next. I think at first I agree with somebody, I think it was Lisa, who said I thought it was going to be policy review. And now I realize that there's so many parts that are connected here that it'll be interesting to see where everything, how it all connects and how we can make improvements and things like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Again, we will meet on November 25th, so it'll be a little while, about a month and a half. But yes, I'm really glad to see the new faces and also the returning people. So have a great month and a half, and we'll see you in November.